This week on Pete Shop Makes, I show you how to make this cool little tap handle with some unconventional methods. So, if you want to find out how, stick around. Alright, what is up you guys? Welcome to Pete Shop Makes. We are down here in my garage today at the Inventables X-Carve CNC router. And the reason for that is my buddy Andy recently reached out to me and asked if I could make a tap handle. He just recently, during this whole COVID pandemic, started doing microbrewing in his house and basically turned his garage refrigerator into a kegerator and asked if I could make him a custom tap handle. There's an endless amount of tap handle styles out there, different materials you can use, and different methods of making them. And in this instance, I could solely make one on the CNC or I can solely make one on the lathe. I have both. I figured why not use both? So I'm basically right now just going to go ahead and cut out a few different practice pieces, different fonts and things like that. And I'm going to run by him and see what he likes. And then I was going to do a traditional wood inlay, but I found quickly that that was just going to be too difficult, too time consuming, and up the price a little bit too much for him. So after I get all these cut out, I will show you what we decided to go ahead and fill them with instead. Okay, so we got the first one finished up here and not really too happy with it, not liking the font. It's a little bit too blocky and the bit that I used was a little bit too aggressive and kind of took the little gaps out, you know, in between the letters and just, yeah, not too happy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and do another couple little test cuts and try some different fonts and then we'll go from there. Following suit with just doing some testing, I'm just using some 5-minute epoxy here to fill this in just to kind of get the pigments right, see what kind of looks good with these types of woods. And typically you'll want to use like an aluminolite resin or a polyester resin. But again, this was just kind of doing some testing and I quickly, after turning this thing down barely round, I quickly realized why you do not want to use this type of epoxy. It cures way too quickly. And unless you're throwing it in a pressure pot immediately, you're going to see why that this is not ideal for this type of project. So after learning what I did from that first piece, I went ahead and mixed up some more epoxy and some pigments, and this was just a piece of mahogany this time. And right here in the high speed, you can actually see when the resin cures what actually happens. It just gets way too hot, cures way too quick, and you cannot get all the air bubbles out. And so I went ahead anyways with this one just to kind of practice my tapering because I knew the final shape I wanted it to be just a nice sleek taper. But this one I went way too thin and ended up actually cutting all the way through so you can see the lettering on both sides. So that's just another scrap practice piece. This piece here was the final practice. This was just a piece of pine that I actually did a slow pour on and then threw it in the pressure pot immediately. And I think I got a pretty good pour on it, and you'll see how this one turns out once I turn it all around. And from here, after I realize my success, we can go ahead and get started on the final piece. Once I became confident in my process and was satisfied with the end result, I go ahead and just practice a couple other techniques on this piece, like drilling the hole for the threaded insert. Typically you would want to do this before you turn the piece around, and I'm going to show you that here in a few minutes. But I really just wanted to show you guys how threaded insert slots were conceived. Yes, I truly am a 13-year-old boy. So anyways, here you can see the first 4 practice pieces. I did these all out of softwoods, alder, pine, and mahogany. I know mahogany's not a softwood, but it is softer on the hardwood side. But anyways, the wood that I chose for the final piece was Purple Heart. Once it oxidizes, it turns a really nice, rich, dark brown. And I thought that would look kind of good with the lighter kind of ocean blue pigment that I chose. And I'm going to go ahead and fill it with some, not the 5-minute epoxy, but some regular Alumilite epoxy. And you may notice also the lettering on the Purple Heart, how it tapers from large to small. The S is the largest letter, and then the R is the smallest. And that's because the shape that I'm going to carve is just a regular, standard sleek taper. And I thought it would look really fluid and nice having the letters taper all down as well as the shape. So I thought that would give it kind of a unique, cool look. So here I am just mixing up the epoxy, and we'll get it poured. And then before I put it on the lathe, I'll show you guys how to properly cut the threaded insert hole. Okay, so the epoxy is good and hard. I want to go ahead and drill the 1/2-inch hole for the standard tap insert, which is 3/8, and we get that drilled out before I start turning this thing around. So for this size insert to be able to fit into that 1/2-inch hole, the 1/2-inch drill bit is just a little bit too small to be able to thread these in properly. So I just simply take a little ball file and my drill just to kind of bore this out a little bit more. And that will just allow the threads to go in a little bit easier. And because this is so dense, this Purple Heart is so dense and hard, I'm going to just add a little bit of oil just to kind of lube it up a little bit to help the threads bore in a little bit easier. The reason for doing it like this instead of turning it around and then doing the insert is because I want to be able to turn it on this mandrel. That way I know it will be straight and there won't be any indiscrepancies when doing this after the fact and trying to get the threaded insert, mounted perfectly straight, and having, when you screw the tap handle on, there'd be an issue with it, sitting crooked or cockeyed. I know because I'm turning it on this mandrel that it will be 100% straight and plumb and true. Alright, now we can get this in the drill chuck and start turning it around. Nice drill. Much better. So my go-to finish for most small turnings, pins, bottle stoppers, rings, tap handles, and I think for most wood turners is boiled linseed oil and CA glue or super glue. It's a very durable finish, and you can buff it out to a pretty high gloss if you want, and it's really easy to apply, pretty difficult to mess up, so I think that's why it's kind of the go-to for a lot of people that I know anyways. But what you want to do first is apply some linseed oil just to some paper towels, or go ahead and wipe that on. Don't even need to let that dry all the way. And then just to the same towel, just go ahead and apply your CA glue right over it. And you got to apply it somewhat quickly because it will dry rather fast. And I'm just using Gorilla Glue, super glue. And then once that dries, whatever the last sandpaper you use, you just want to go ahead and sand that back. And at this stage, I prefer to do wet sanding. Now we can apply another coat. What's also great about this finish is the rapid succession to which it can be applied. So this is my fourth coat in about 10 minutes. And then once this one dries, I'll go ahead and use a microcrystalline wax to sort of give it a friction polish. I'll turn it up to high speed, kind of burnish the acrylates so you can just give it that really nice high sheen. I just did a little concave there on the end. That's gonna wrap this one up. I think it came out nice.